course, I guess what I was also getting at, and maybe it's more of a point right now, is I think a lot of times, oftentimes, most times, it's the believability of the messenger, and rather than the message itself, right? So, I mean, I'm not a communication studies professor or anything like that. Psychology is my field, but when you're trying to convey, when you are trained in how to give presentations, right? You're supposed to kind of give a sense of your credibility, not just your message. Because if you can't convey a sense of credibility and authority in what you're about to say, why will I listen to you? I actually changed my way of giving lectures and presentations because there was a TED Talk or something like that where it just said, don't be too humble where you don't tell them why you have credentials and wait till the end. They already didn't listen to you if you didn't tell them why they should listen to you. So you got to put it up front. I went to school, I had degrees and this and that, or my conversions, or kind of like what Paul did, right? And he talks about he starts off with his credentials and then his message. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I feel like a lot of what apologetics is about is working on your presentation, your appeal, and that sounds sort of superficial, mm-hmm. But a lot of the message and its believability by the audience has to do with, can I trust this person? And from a Catholic perspective, because I'm the Roman Catholic here, I was labeled in this advertisement as that, is that however these scriptures were put together, it took 3 centuries, right? So, if you're like 1,000 years removed from whoever decided which books go into the New Testament and the Old Testament, you have to have a sense of, why do I believe these are the scriptures? How do I believe these are God's words? I have to trust that those folks in the 3rd century had some credibility and authority and desire and whatever it is, that they wanted to preserve the truth. And I have to accept that or trust in that before I believe anything else, because not too long ago I was talking to some Mormons and they were telling me, hey, are you willing to read my Book of Mormon and my Pearl of Great Price? And I said, no, absolutely not. And they said, well, why? Well, I already know it's not true, right? So I'm not going to but on the what basis do they believe their scriptures are true? It's a burning in their hearts, they'll say. Well, why would I accept that? I mean, as the basis for me starting to study, like, it's already hard enough to read the 73 books of the New Testament, of the Bible. For that, on top of that, all the Mormon books, no, I'm not, because I already beforehand don't accept those books. But it has to be more, I think, than just accepting these are the individual books of the Bible. I have to trust that whoever put those books together had some authority. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, and just on that, something I was thinking about, just a clarification, like, for you guys, like, this isn't apologetics. Apologetics isn't being a speaker and standing on a stage and making the argument to a crowd why you believe. Like, apologetics historically is talking to your coworker, talking to your friend, like, just being in your community and having dialogue that's just past the superficial level of what you did over the weekend. Because, hard times happen. Sometimes your coworker comes up and is like, man, it's been a hard week. I lost my mom to cancer. Or, I just don't know where I'm going in life. I don't know what I want to do after graduation. Like, so often these conversations is where apologetics comes in, because it does have influence into our life, our view of the world. And so much of apologetics is what you guys do when you leave here, when you talk to your non-believing friends. It's not always making a formal case for God based on the origin of the universe. And ultimately, like, a big stress off your shoulders is that it's not your job to convince anyone of anything. Like, I kind of mentioned it in a question earlier after my presentation, that subject that comes in is the will to believe. For some people, there's no amount of evidence that will ever convince them to become a Christian, to believe in Jesus as Lord and Savior, because they don't want that. They don't want the implications that brings to their life. They don't want to surrender to God and do life that way. And for some people, maybe, it's less evidence, and you can walk them through that. Just kind of getting to that, I think that's a good point that, some people you're not going to convince them. There may be atheists that aren't asking those questions, aren't asking for that evidence, and I think that's true. You know, I've had conversations with people like that. And I think in those conversations, it doesn't take you very long to see the people that really just want to get into an argument and make a point and get out. But I think there are people that really are asking questions, who are going through pain and looking for real answers. And that's your job. You don't have to convince them, but faithfully acknowledge the Lord before others, and one day he'll acknowledge you before the Father. I think that's all apologetics really is.